Friends, in this year UPSC Mains essay paper, I am discussing each essay in a separate video. In this video, I am going to discuss the 7th question of essay paper from section B, which is a society that has more justice is a society that needs less charity. So, in society, as the justice increases, there will be less requirement for charity. So, as usually for every essay, the standard framework that I suggest that I follow is that try to explain the meaning of the keywords. Here the keywords are justice and charity. Try to define in your own words what do you mean by justice and give an example. Similarly, what do you mean by charity and give an example. And then tell the essence of the overall sentence. That is, a society that has more justice, maybe gender justice, environmental justice, social justice, economic justice, society having more justice, the people in the society requires less charity because they don't need somebody to help them. So explain the meaning of sentence and then try to give examples from Indian Constitution or try to mention some government schemes of India that tries to attain or achieve justice in different spheres. So after giving a lot of examples, try to break down the statement and try to write again a statement. That means after explain statement, give examples. You should also mention what are the reasons because of which in society sometimes justice lacks or there is less justice. Explain those things and also tell in such societies why there is more need for charity. So that is one dimension. One more dimension is even if justice is there, charity is important. You cannot completely eliminate charity. Then explain what are the factors that help a society in having better charity, or what are the factors that make people in a society to do less charity. So like that, try to discuss different dimensions of the essay. So as I said, and also one more thing friends, I am starting with defining the basic words of the essay, but you can actually start with a current affairs example or a story. For example, you can start with an example like Article 21A of Constitution of India tries to provide free education opportunity compulsorily for all the children of 6 to 14 years in India, which is a right step in direction of achieving justice, so that in the long term these people can stand on their own legs. And you can write something like that, and then next paragraph you can start discussing the keywords. But I generally start with defining the keywords in my own language and then defining the meaning of the essay. What is my perspective of the essay? So justice, as we can say, is the equality and equity in the distribution of resources, as mentioned in Article 39 of DPSP of Constitution of India. Equal distribution of resources, opportunities, all opportunities, education opportunities, economic opportunities, legal opportunities, social opportunities, and equal rights, like how the fundamental rights in India is giving the rights. So also because of this, we are essentially eliminating any kind of discrimination or oppression or inequality undergone by certain sections of people in society. And then you can give some example. I have given example of the right to education. Like that, you spend one paragraph on justice, then spend a paragraph on charity. Write a paragraph on charity. Charity is basically an act of individual or organizations to help the people in need. For example, mostly charity is an act to help the people who are in immediate need. It does not generally consist of long-term gains, immediate needs only. So, for example, disaster relief or those in poverty, providing the food or job at that point of time. It's generosity, act of assistance. Any example you can write. I give example of providing shelter to the homeless, providing food to the hungry, or providing clothes to those who do not have it. Anything you can write. Then see this paragraph I have mentioned there is no need to write this paragraph, but generally it's always good to compare the keywords. If those keywords are in close association, compare them so that evaluator will understand that you have got complete clarity on the keywords given in the essay topic. Then you can get into the essay. Don't spend more lines for it. Just 3 to 4 lines are enough. For example, you can say that charity is serving the people, a social service, where justice actually helps in social change fundamentally, and charity is mostly to address the immediate requirements, whereas justice helps in the long-term achievement of the social equity in the society. And charity mostly is directed to solve the problem of injustice. For example, poverty occurs because of injustice, because of improper distribution of resources, poverty occurs. To solve the problem at a lower scale, to meet the immediate requirements, we go for charity. Whereas justice always solves the root causes of the social problems. Generally, charity is done by individuals, organizations at the private level, whereas justice is done by the collective action or the government at a higher level. Now, after defining all the keywords and comparing the keywords by giving examples, in the 4th or 5th paragraph, we enter into the actual meaning of the essay topic. Now you explain the meaning of the topic. You say that as justice tries to resolve the inequalities and justice tries to resolve the root level social problems, because of which the individuals in society who are able to get the justice will not be in need of any kind of charity from anybody. Particularly a government which is able to provide the basic needs for all the people, in such a country people will not need any kind of charity. Similarly, in education, employment, healthcare, social services, if we are able to provide affordable access with fairness and equity, definitely people in such kind of society will need less charity. So like that you explain in your own words, and then you can write various examples to substantiate, to justify the given statement. For example, I have taken employment that helps in attaining economic justice. For example, Government of India is continuing MGNRGA mainly because it's providing 100 days of employment for the unskilled and semi-skilled people, mainly in the rural areas. Particularly in India, it is very important because India has seasonal employment in rural areas, because of which mostly they depend on the charity. Because MGNRGA, they are able to have constant income in a year, because of which the dependency on charity is reducing. As justice is increasing, dependence on charity is decreasing. Even acts like Minimum Wages Act ensures that every company pays minimum wages so that it is sufficient for them and their family, and they no need to depend on charity. Similarly, healthcare, just like how employment helps to achieve economic justice, healthcare, access to affordable healthcare helps in attaining the social justice. And National Health Mission, Ayushman Bharat together has reduced the dependence of Indians on the charity for their immediate urgent hospital expenses or emergency conditions. Similarly, legal justice. For example, many may not be able to afford a lawyer, and hence they may not be able to really get a fair trial. Hence, to increase access to legal representation, Government of India enacted the Legal Services Authorities Act 1987, which actually comes out of the DPSP. Because of this, even economically weaker sections also are able to access a fair criminal justice system, and thus how legal justice is achieved. Because of that, to most extent, we cannot say completely, but to great extent, because of which the necessity to depend on charitable organizations has reduced considerably. Like that, in every example you have to mention how increased justice has reduced the dependence on charity. Similarly, you can write about environmental justice, you can write about gender justice, how Beti Bachao Beti Padhao is not a scheme, but it is a cultural. It is changing the culture because of raising the awareness to create gender equality. You can write about those aspects. You can write several social welfare programs that you know of that Government of India is implementing here I mentioned Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, because of which most of them have access to insurance and they have bank accounts. Along with the bank account, they get several financial services and they become part of financial inclusion, which actually reduces their dependency on the charitable organizations. Similarly, as present world is moving towards technology, it is must to have access to technology, access to digital tools, and this is called digital justice and digital inclusion. The Digital India initiative, Government of India, actually helped the people from remote areas, rural areas to access the digital tools and technology in meeting their basic requirements that are dependent on the technology. Similarly, for the persons with disabilities, disabled people are able to be included in the development story of India. They are able to get the justice because of this act, right of PWD Act. Hence, their dependence on the charity, their dependence on others has reasonably reduced. Friends, you can write of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, you can write any other short film programs. You can say that political engagement of people will make them aware of various rights and make them aware of how they should be able to access the schemes and get the justice. Even India has to increase the research and data collection to know which sections of society are unable to access which kind of justice, which sections of people are even today depend on the charity. Based on that, we can implement more schemes and reduce the dependence on charity. So like that, I have written many examples to substantiate the topic given in the essay. And particularly, you can put one separate paragraph only for Constitution of India, because Constitution of India especially focused on justice. For example, the preamble especially mentions about social, economic, political justice. Even the Constitution of India also, political rights are mostly given by fundamental rights, and social economic rights they get from DPSP. Particularly 3 articles I mentioned here. For example, Article 39 that I mentioned in the introduction of the essay, distribution of resources to ensure economic justice. Similarly, basic minimum wage required for anybody, either working, if they are not working, MGNRGA is giving minimum wages. Now, as we have finished explaining the meaning of the essay topic and as we have given many examples, now we have to start discussing other dimensions of the essay. Other dimensions of the essay, like for example, what are the reasons behind low justice in several societies? Not only India, globally, what may be the reasons for having low justice? Every government, every society strives to achieve justice. However, there are many factors that are hindering societies to progress in that path. What are those factors? And because of low justice, what kind of charity are the people dependent on? For example, see, the discrimination, particularly in societies, in countries where there are many ethnicities, races, religions, castes, in such kind of diverse societies, if there is no equality, if there is discrimination, it leads to injustice. For example, you can write example of Sri Lanka, where there are 2 different ethnicities. You can write example from Myanmar, the recent Rohingya crisis, and India also you can write the problem that recently arose in the Manipur between 2 ethnicities. So like that, because structural inequalities, there is a chance of injustice and lack of comprehensive policies. Though Government of India is able to address most of the problems through policies, still we have to ensure that the present policies are more comprehensive. As long as the policies are not very comprehensive, more people will not be able to access the fundamental healthcare, employment, education. Similarly, economic factors. For example, whenever there is recession, 2008, the global recession has caused inequalities in several European countries, several Western countries. Similarly, economic instability that occurs because of inflation or because of increased exports, increased imports, reduced exports, or economic downturns generally countries face once in a while. These emergency situations leads to instability in economy and society and make the people depend on charity more. Similarly, just like the social stigma, for example LGBT, the LGBT communities even today are not hired into most of the organizations, still they face discrimination, justice they are unable to achieve, and during emergency, geological, geographical emergencies like disasters or COVID like pandemics or conflicts like happening in the Manipur, that also keeps the people who are economically weaker and vulnerable not get the justice. And limited resources in some countries make the countries impossible to divide it among the people equally, and some section will not be able to access resources, and that leads to injustice, and hence they are dependent on the charity not only from their government, their people, international charity organizations also help such countries. Example, you can write about Ethiopia and many sub-Saharan African countries that are dependent on the aid from United Nations, charity from United Nations. You can discuss about that. Similarly, friends, because technological change, any society, people who are unable to adapt, use it, are at a disadvantage, and they need charitable organizations to help them. Now, after explaining what are the various factors that lead to low justice and which makes people depend on charity, let us come and address another dimension of the essay. That is, basically, is charity really not required in societies having good amount of justice? No. In society, there may be conditions, disasters, emergencies, economic recessions that again make the people vulnerable. Hence, charity is definitely required continuously for any country. At some stage government will not be able to, for example, COVID pandemic. During the COVID pandemic, no economic system, no healthcare system expected such a pandemic. Hence, they were not ready. In such cases, definitely they would depend on the aid from international organizations, local organizations, private people within the country. So, charity always plays a crucial role in particularly exceptional challenges. Friends, what are the reasons behind charity? For example, in some countries, in some societies, more people will be willing to do charity, whereas in some regions and some cultures, less people are willing to do charity. Why this? Why this difference is there? Let us understand the difference. You have to, in this essay, as you are focusing on justice, you should also write few points on charity. For example, as we discussed, the charity is definitely important. Even if justice is there, it is important. So let us see what is making some cultures, practice more charity than other cultures. One is tradition, the cultural tradition. Even in the different religions texts, it is mentioned that it is essential for every human being to contribute to others, to philanthropy, to help the people who are in need, the hungry people, the poor people. So it's a tradition. Similarly, based on historical background of that country, there is a moral obligation of some people, societies, to volunteer. They feel it is social responsibility. Some cultures, people feel it is their social responsibility to help the people in need. Also, in some cultures, there is recognition for those who are doing social service. In such cultures, more and more people come out and help. But let us also understand why gradually these days the number of people who are already willing to do charity are decreasing. See, you can write examples of Melinda Gates Foundation, Tata Foundation. You can write example of, for example, how Sonu Sood helped during the COVID-19. You can write examples. Whereas here you can say that in some societies there is no recognition. Hence, nobody comes forward to help. Also, organizationally there is no structure to pool the funds and do the charity, and there is lack of trust. There is lack of trust on the organizations because of siphoning of funds, misuse of funds, and in some countries there are financial constraints to do charity, and emotionally the people are not connected with the poor and hungry. Hence, it's a responsibility to emotionally sensitize the youth to do the charity. fear of scams, lack of time to do charity, and the education these days is not much value based. These are the various reasons why charity is not really there among the youth in the present generation compared to the previous generations. Also friends, at the end generally I would suggest to close the essay with some suggestions. So here the best way is to suggest what we have to do to increase or cultivate the culture of charity in society, particularly among the children and youth, because they are going to become the future of the country, future of the world. One is constantly engage them in community activities and make them participate as volunteers in NGOs or any community activities, and promote the culture of empathy and solidarity, particularly in times of disasters and any pandemics. And also international collaboration has to increase, particularly the developed countries have to help the developing countries in various aspects. And at awareness